So I'm going to set my timer. I'm going to try to be mindful of time. So what I want to basically talk about is myth number 1, unions create a wedge between faculty and graduate students, and myth number 5, unions don't really make a difference. So I'm going to take a kind of circuitous route to do that because I'm going to tell you a horror story. So, like most horror stories, this is not one that will or can happen to you. So just, sit back and enjoy the ride, I guess. I was involved in graduate union organizing at Yale like 25 years ago now, or several years ago now. And one of the things that I learned during that experience with its various ups and downs was the fact that it's not only the case that unions make a difference, but union drives make a difference. They make a huge difference. The reason I'm saying that is because there still isn't actually a graduate union at Yale. It's a very different situation from yours. It's a private institution. It's an Ivy. There's legal wrangling, etc. But they had been trying to get a union since 1971, and it's very interesting because every time there was a union action, every time there was kind of talk of a vote or talk of a card drive or any of those things, the graduate school gave the graduate students stuff. It happened time and time again. So they would say, unions don't make a difference, you don't need a union to get the things you want, but it was always the case that you only got things when they were afraid you were going to unionize or when you were in the middle of unionizing. So I think that to me was kind of the strongest argument, that what they were saying out of their mouth, that it doesn't make a difference and it's not a positive thing, is actually exactly the reverse. So that's sort of one kind of overarching thing I want to say. The other thing I want to say is, and again, this is going to sound kind of negative, but actually it's not. I think the idea that unions create a wedge between faculty and graduate students depends upon this idea that there isn't already a wedge there. And I think before the union drive that I went through, I thought that was right. I was like, my professors take me to lunch, they're really nice to me, et cetera, et cetera. Like they basically see me as a human being and not just, someone to like do the work for them or be exploited by them, et cetera. But at the time when I was involved in union organizing and we decided to have a grade strike, things became very clarified very quickly. And what I mean by that is all along faculty had been saying, the ones who were not in support, and there were people who were in support, but the ones who weren't were saying, I don't really think it's a great idea, but you make your own choice. I mean, there were some people who were really kind of on the offensive about not being in a union, but mostly they said, like, you make your own choice. I don't think it's a good idea. Here are the reasons why. But when the grade strike happened and the administration got very nervous about grades not being turned in and what that was going to mean, et cetera, they very, very quickly identified who their friends were. And who their friends were in that context was faculty. And so they went to faculty and they picked selective faculty and they said, you need to lean on your TAs to turn in grades. Now, it was very strategic because they picked 2 international students to do this to, and they picked a black woman. So there were many, many, many of us doing the grade strike, but they were very clear about it. And we were also all members of like the leadership council. So what that ended up meaning is that we were, in quotes, put on trial over disciplinary charges, that we had not basically gone along with authority, that we had intimidated people by not turning in our grades, like things that ended up being demonstrably false and nothing ever happened to any of us. But the point I want to make here is that at a crucial moment when faculty could either support us or they could really stand on the sidelines and say, you make your own choice, I'm not going to interfere with the grade strike whether I agree with it or not, there are many, many faculty members who actually did the work of the administration. Because if no faculty had come forward, they would not have been able to go through this like sham kangaroo court thing that resulted in nothing. We all got like letters in our file, which I'm convinced, never saw the light of day. So the point I guess what I want to make, and this is why I said that it sounds like a horror story, but it's not, because it really did clarify for me the ways in which the faculty was as powerless as I was in certain ways, right? Like when the administration said to them, you need to do certain things, they had to, or they felt they had to do it. And in fact, they could have taken a different line, right? They could have said, I want to be on the side of people who are making their own decisions about how they want to organize themselves. And many of them did that, but some of them didn't. And I think the reason is because there is an asymmetry between, in the relationship between faculty and graduate students. It just is there. And that, by definition, I think means there is a wedge there that can be exploited at various times or not. And I think one of the things that I learned about my experience as a union organizer and as someone who tried to get a union is that the only real way to address the fact that there already is a wedge there that maybe you don't always see is to collectively organize with other people. Because despite the fact that I was put on trial and all these things happened, like, it was sort of the best thing about being in graduate school, because I had a feeling that I was part of a collective project, that I was part of democratizing the university in a real sense, and that I was part of addressing issues for people like lack of healthcare insurance that was affordable if they had a family. And I didn't get that experience or that feeling in any other context. I think the wedge is there, and the way to kind of address that wedge is to collectively join one another. That's the thing I learned. Thank you.